Hi, very warm welcome. It's Gene. Don't worry, guys, I haven't left you. You ain't getting rid of me that easy. What a state the world's in. And would you agree with me that since October last year, that's when real things started to get a bit warmer, didn't they? For us all, we really started to feel the pinch, I think. What we're seeing all around the world with the protests in all these countries is just a result of, the criminal behaviour of just a few organisations. This morning I switched on mainstream media, which I rarely do these days because we all know it's propaganda to the hilt. And on the topic of propaganda, I cannot wait till hopefully later on this day Tucker Carlson releases his interview with President Putin. That's if he's not already in the gulag or, experiencing his third hot bath. I don't even know if they still do that, but I've heard rumours what they used to do in that gulag and it weren't nice. But, where do we start? China lost 2 trillion just in the last 3 months. Its economy is stagnated for the 4th month in concession, as well as all the other trillions that it's losing, and there's a mass exodus of business and equity funds flying over now to the next kids on the block, India, because that's where they're investing the money now. Spain, you got the farmers protesting, not just in Spain, all over Europe, and civil unrest all over the world, even in the UK, believe it or not. You would not believe it. In this day and age, 2024, this is the beginning of the outlook for 2024. A local dentist somewhere in the country decided to take on NHS patients, which just means it's not free if you don't know what the NHS is in the UK. It just means it's private. And it decided to take on NHS patients. And there was a huge queue all the way down the road, going right round the corner. And, that's the state of this country's healthcare system. And should we be surprised about anything? Look, if we was to just tell these organisations to do one, we've lived without them before. They're not elected, but they're telling our governments what to do, but more so, they're telling our governments to hand over chunks of money. If we got rid of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, the United Nations, the European Union, the World Health Organization and NATO, and scrapped net zero carbon policies tomorrow, there would be plenty of money to resolve issues like healthcare. Let's face it, most countries like the UK can look after themselves. We have a nuclear deterrent, and if anyone wants to mess with a country with a nuclear deterrent, then they've lost the plot, because they could well be looking at, not being able to use their territory for the next 500,000 years until the radiation has subsided to a level where that land can be used again. So we don't need NATO. NATO, if anything else, have put us on the doorstep of World War III. We don't need our defence budget being separated and going a bit to NATO and then, privately sponsoring the Ukraine with billions of pounds. What about spending that money on the broken, busted infrastructure in the UK and in America and in Canada? Our own governments not giving the money to those organisations I just mentioned and spending it on the people that they should be spending it in any case, and doing that ASAP. They won't until we get it sorted ourselves. We've got to stop this. They're, like I said, unelected officials. The International Monetary Fund have ruined Europe with their loans and interests and going in and stealing people's pensions. Look, who pays for all those people that work at the International Monetary Fund? Taxpayers from all over. All over. Who pays for the United Nations and all their crony, unelected officials that work for the United Nations? We do. Who pays for the European Union? We do. Who pays for the World Health Organization and NATO? Guess what? I don't need to keep saying the same old thing, but we do anyhow. That's why there's protests all around the world. They've bust the purse of the taxpayer. And now it's having a crippling, detrimental effect because of the policies such as net zero by 2040. That's why they're protesting in Europe at the moment, the farmers. Because the policies that they're coming out with doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If you're a country that produces citrus fruits, like Spain, and that's why they're protesting at the moment, because they're importing citrus. They're not supporting their own farmers. Now, farmers, have got no choice, but if they want to meet their deliveries, they've got to use, unfortunately, pesticides. No other way around it. But they've been told they can't use them. But they've not been told what they can do alternatively by the so-called experts or the panel of super scientists. They've not come up with an explanation. They just said no. They've pushed it back, I think now, net zero to 2040, or they've said in the European Union at least that by 2040 they want to be 90% on target to net zero, and it won't happen. It will not happen, and it won't happen in the UK either, because if you look at what we produce through renewables, and how unreliable they are, there is no money invested in battery technology to store, when there's a good day of wind or when there's a good day of solar radiation on them panels. There's no battery stores. The only way we store this energy is by pumping water up to a higher altitude and then leaving it there until perhaps on the evening or on a night or at a time where we're not producing so much energy. Then they let the water fall back down and go through hydro generators. That's all we've got. And that's what we've managed to end up with after 25 years and trillions of pounds spent. That's just the UK alone, by the way. That isn't accounting for all the trillions that have been spent on this worldwide. And at the time, they tell a little country like the United Kingdom, listen, what is our country? Is it like 400 miles from top to bottom? Not even half of that side to side? A small island in the Atlantic Ocean? They expect us to do all this green net zeroing and whatever else. And then, what can they do about countries like China, India, Pakistan, and all the other eastern countries? What can they do about it? When they turn around to, the likes of the United Nations and said, look, when our people live as rich as what yours people do in your country, then we'll consider, your green policies, but don't expect us, not to evolve like you did in the last 150 years. Burning fossil fuels and, everything. We're shutting down another steel company in this country. How ridiculous is that? If we have to go all out on a war on our own, we won't be able to produce tanks, aircraft, nothing, because of carbon zero. You tell these politicians that, it's not good enough. Any of this is not good enough. Whacking great big queues just so that the poor people on benefits can go and get some dental treatment, dental work, and that shows how bad the NHS system is in this country. Exactly, I want to know, what do we get for our money? Because there seems to be ever increasing waiting lists. 6 months for a cancer biopsy to be done is a death sentence if it is cancer for somebody. It's absolutely not right. They're still telling people in this country we have an active performing NHS healthcare system in place, where if you fall ill, you will be taken care of. It's nothing like that. It's a death trap, and they're not resolving it, and they can't resolve it. And the reason why they can't resolve it is because they're paying the International Monetary Fund, the United Nations, the EU, the World Health Organisations, NATO, and on top of that, they've slapped these net zero carbon policies on everybody. This has got to stop. And, they won't stop. They will keep, trust me, they will keep expanding these. I could give you a reason not to fund any one of those organisations. Let's just start with the World Health Organisation. Why should they be entitled to what they've asked for? 5% of the nation's healthcare budget. Why should they be entitled to that? You add up all these 5%, all across the way, like NATO, 7 maybe percent. The European Union, well, okay, we did leave the European Union, but the policies are still affecting us. And, you know, we are, I bet you any money, even though we're out of Europe, the European Union, we are still paying them. I bet you 100% we're still paying them. And, you know, by the time it comes to stopping paying them, we'll be back with them. Unless the people do something about it. You know, they have had to resort, listen to this, and you know this is true, they have had to resort to such levels of propaganda where we do not know in the West get proper press and, you know, investigations done on this. And when something goes wrong, you know, people are called out for it. We ain't seen none of that for 5 years. Not even 5 years. Who are they trying to kid here? These organisations need to go, and as soon as they go, you know, the wealth will come back to our countries. If it's 5% for the IMF, 5% for the United Nations, 5% for Europe, 5% for the World Health Organization, another 5% for, you know, NATO, and let's not forget, how much is net zero carbon policies actually costing us? It's destroying farms, businesses in all these countries. These bureaucrats that are unelected need to go, and I can tell you now, we have our own politicians which we will put in line if we need to. If they step out of line, they get protests against. Simple as that. You know, but if we don't do nothing, these organisations will continue to grow. And let's face it, if you start looking at the salaries of these people that work for these organisations, they're not cheap. They will continue to keep growing. You will have more of them come around, and when there is no more 5% to be had, and the infrastructure and the roads look like the moon, it'll be too late, because you'll have destroyed the future of your children and, you know, the future prosperity of the human race. Basically, we are at that precipice now where something's got to be done, and I do see more people paying attention. But there is a lack of action by a lot of people, and that needs to change. And them organisations need to go. And it's no wonder, is it? It's no wonder that from October last year, people finally ran out of the last bit of juice on the credit cards, and now they're fucked. It's because it's all been stole away from them by those organisations. And it's these organisations that are acting like Nazis now, in pushing policies to silence people on alternative media platforms like this and others. The reason why they're doing it is because they don't want people like me winding up people like you to the point where you protest, because that means, you know, that there is a limit almost on their days in power. Now I say to you, they was never elected to start with. We need to start putting pressure on our governments and our own politicians within our own countries to stop this nonsense. Because they're the ones that were elected, if you can call it that, and not a rigged election. Just disgusting behaviour from a load of criminals, you know, laundering money like it's out of fashion. I mean, they don't launder like they did in the good old days, you know, 1 million. Now they're laundering billions and trillions. That's the level of their crime. And not to this day has any of them gone to jail. Yeah, you want to talk about murderers? Look no further. You want to talk about warmongers? Let me tell you something. The World Health Organization let us down in 2019. Absolutely showed that how useless they were. Why are they still being paid anything? And why do they even have the audacity to ask for 5% of the national health budget of all the countries? Why? We'll get back to the science that we usually focus on. But, you know, you cannot help but talk about these things because they affect us all at some way or form or other. You know, that's why all our countries are in such a state. You know, we need to all start taking part in proactive and not sitting on our chairs doing nothing about these issues, you know. And if you don't want to do something about it, then absolutely support somebody that does. Someone like our little observatory that, you know, I've been here for years. If you've followed me for the, 5, 10 years, you know we have been on this case and these matters for a long, long time. This isn't something new that I've just been suddenly wound up by all the, mainstream garbage media. This has been something that's been going on and festering away for a long time. And people like me have been telling you, you know this, you've been told for a long time that this was going to get to this point. And we ain't halfway there yet. We're not at equilibrium with this because these people and these organisations are expanding. That means another 5% here, another 5% there. That means financially, our countries are not going to get out of the trouble that they're in. Look at the debt we've got already, all our countries. Well, there's a link down there, guys, if you want to help support us. We'll do a World Health at a glance tomorrow. We're going to have a look at all the geo-anomalies that are taking place and put them together for you. But you know what? I've got to say, we have lost here on our observatory ourselves since October 75% of the revenue that we raised. Can you believe that? Tried to tell you guys, I really did try and tell you the state of things and what bad they were. And I know they are for a lot of people, but that's a big haircut, guys. 75% of what we used to raise. So, there's a link down there if you want to chuck in a few bucks. It'd be really appreciated. So I'll say what I usually do. You take care of your loved ones, take care of yourself, and till tomorrow, I'll say what I usually do. Bye for now.